Hey everybody, welcome in. We're going to give folks a few seconds to settle their audio preferences as well as their video preferences. But thank you guys so much for joining us. We're just giving folks a few seconds to come into the meeting space. You know what? I should have done music. I always say this, Chris. Music, I think it would kill the silence while we're waiting for folks to come into a room. But we will get started in just a second here. Again, welcome in to our AACRAO Resources for State and Regional Annual Conferences webinar hosted by my colleagues Chris as well as Tiffany. We'll give it just maybe another 30 seconds. So 30 more seconds of odd silence to bear, and then we'll jump into it. But again, thank you guys so much for taking time out of your afternoon to join us today. Alrighty, so for those of you guys who have not joined us for an AACRAO webinar, we do use Zoom webinar, which works a little bit differently than our Zoom meetings. And so you'll notice the functions on the bottom are a bit different. And for this webinar, we really encourage you guys to use the Q&A function on the bottom for any questions that you have. And I know that Tiffany and Chris will be looking to have engagement and questions towards the end. So you can use the Q&A for those questions and the chat box for engaging in conversation. You can also ask to raise your hand or be unmuted if you want to come off the mic at any point in time. And if you guys have any questions on tech, please feel free to message me directly using the chat. But without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to my colleague, Tiffany. Tiffany, welcome in. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, thanks, Christina, and thank you all for joining us today for 1 hour. Thanks for giving us an hour of your time to kind of talk about some of the resources that we have for state and regional associations that can help you out for your annual conferences. All right, so today we're going to cover, this is going to show you a bulk of what we're going to cover for today. We're going to talk a little bit about how to request an AACRAO rep for your conference, what expenses are covered by AACRAO. My colleague Chris is going to talk about how do you submit a best of the best session and what that is, and also AACRAO Awards, how that works and what your state and regional association qualifies for. We're going to leave some time at the end for a little bit of Q&A and discussion as well. So Chris, go ahead and feel free to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Tiffany. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Huang. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor and Registrar at Purdue University, Fort Wayne, and also Chair of the AACRAO State and Regional Relations Committee. This is my second year as Chair, and just glad to have Tiffany join us. Some of the goals that we were kind of coming off of leadership is hearing a lot of, hey, I didn't know that, comments for those that were there. So we wanted to put this together. So Tiffany, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Everybody, my name is Tiffany Shu. I'm the Executive Assistant and Board Liaison. In my current role, I help assist the Executive Director with any needs that she has. I help to support the board, and then I also help to support the state and regional associations. So I am your contact person, your liaison, essentially, between you guys and the board. So I mainly help to assist with any of the requests for an AACRAO rep inquiries that come in. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Towards the end of the presentation, I'll go ahead and put my contact information. You can reach out that way. So this slide is showing you the 5 main goals of the AACRAO strategic plan. I'm not going to go through and read through all of these, but I do want to draw attention to goals 4 and 5, which I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in the next 2 slides. Goal 4 is reimagine engagement and community through both digital and in-person modalities for the membership of diverse professionals who have a variety of roles and complex responsibilities. And one of the strategies that is attached with that is that we are looking to strengthen the collaboration between AACRAO and state and regional associations. So we're constantly looking for ways to engage with our state and regional associations. We understand that, sometimes the budget can be kind of tight for state and regional associations. You may not be able to send somebody to an AACRAO meeting or an AACRAO event. And so we're always looking for ways to engage with you guys, either at low cost or sometimes even free. We understand that we need to look into in-person events. A lot of people see a lot of benefits from in-person events, but then also digital events, virtual events, that kind of thing. Goal 5 is to develop and lead strong advocacy coalitions to benefit the advancement of higher education policy, and the learners we serve. And under this goal, at leadership, you'll see that we invited our director of government relations to come and talk about some of the legislative updates, but also ways that you can advocate for your state and regional association. And we'll talk a little bit more when I get into requesting an AACRAO rep on how you can engage with our government relations department to come and speak at your annual conferences. So we're going to divide this up and talk a little bit about what you need to know pre-conference. And one of the main things that we get asked a lot is, how do you request an AACRAO rep? So it's very simple. You just go onto the AACRAO website. You'll see who we are. If you just kind of hover over that button, you'll see a state and regional link. If you click on that, that's going to take you to the state and regional page. And what you'll see on that page is a variety of resources, but you'll specifically see a box to your right that says request an AACRAO rep. And what you do is you go ahead and fill out that form. Once you go ahead and click submit, I actually get a copy of that form. I look through it to see what's being requested, and I reach out to our board members, to AACRAO staff if you've requested for anybody specifically, and I work with them to see if they're able to attend your meeting, whether that be virtual or in person. So like I said, the form is found on the state and regional page. Once you go onto that form, it'll ask you for all sorts of information, such as like meeting dates, what kind of topics you're requesting. We kind of have a drop down, just kind of general categories, but if you want something a little bit more specific, you can indicate that on the form. You can request for anything related to admissions and enrollment management, a legislative update, records and registration. You can even do diversity and inclusion. Whatever you'd like, you can go ahead and indicate that on the form. You can also request for a specific board member if you wish. So there's a field on there that you can indicate which board member you would like to attend. That's really based on availability of that board member, but we'll do our best to source the person that you request. Sometimes it also kind of depends on the expertise area of board member that you're requesting. So I'll look through that as well. But like I said, once you put a specific board member's name on there, I'll do my best to reach out to that board member first. We'll give you preference in that case. Same thing goes for AACRAO staff. If you, I know Leroy is somebody who we get requests about a lot to attend various state and regional conferences, and Leroy is available. His schedule's kind of a little bit tricky to kind of maneuver around, but if you want him to speak on, FERPA, go ahead and indicate that on the form. Bill Gill and Michelle Mott, who work with our government relations team, they're available to give any legislative updates. A lot of the times they may not be able to travel due to budget issues to various state and regional conferences, but we do our best to accommodate certain requests. And so we can always do a pre-recording or a virtual session. As far as pamphlets or AACRAO swag, that's definitely something that we can provide if you request for that. Go ahead and send an email to me and then let me know how many pieces of swag or how many pamphlets you'd like us to send, and we can arrange for a box to go to your state and regional conference. And lastly, how far in advance do you need to request for an AACRAO rep? I would say as soon as possible, because the calendar does fill up, especially for the state and regional associations that tend to have conferences in kind of like that October, November range. A lot of those dates overlap, and you may not be able to get the person that you're requesting. And so as soon as you know those calendar dates, go ahead and fill out that form that's on the state and regional site. And once I receive notification that a form has come in, I'll go ahead and look at the calendars. I'll go ahead and send out that email to our reps, and we'll try to get something calendared in. Who is responsible for what? So when you request for an AACRAO rep, the state and regional association is expected to pay for lodging for that rep. We ask that you waive the conference registration fee for that rep, and then also any meals that you want to provide. It's optional, as I've listed on here, so don't feel pressure that you need to provide the meals, because if you don't, AACRAO will cover those meals for the rep, and then we'll cover the transportation as well. Some things to note post-conference. We ask that you update your leadership roster. And how you do that is, again, you go onto that state and regional link on our website, and you'll see there's an update your leadership roster button. It's that purple button that's right on the page. It takes you to a form. You fill out all sorts of information as to who your president is, who your president-elect is, your treasurer. Is there anybody that does communication from your side? And you fill out all the bits and pieces of information on there. We like to recommend that you designate a person to do that, whoever that may be, whether that be your president-elect, just so that that person is expected to fill out this information. And each time you have new leadership roll in, it's just a part of your onboarding process. And that way, nobody drops the ball as to updating the leadership roster. And it's important because we use this roster to communicate with you. This is how we get our information out there. When we send out leadership meeting invites, we go onto that roster and we send the leadership invites to the president and the president-elect. So if you don't update your rosters, you don't really know who to send it to. So it's really important that you update that leadership roster as soon as you can. Something else that you can find on the state and regionals link is a link to join the state and regional leaders Google group. So this has now replaced the former listserv. It's now a Google group, and it could be used to share all sorts of information. Chris monitors that quite a bit. And so if there's any webinars or any free resources or something exciting that's pertinent to state and regional associations, we like to use that Google group to share that information. And feel free also to use the Google group to kind of communicate amongst yourselves. If you have any issues or any questions that you want to ask your colleagues about, that's also a great place to do that. And this is also something that we ask that you include as a part of your onboarding process, is to go ahead and get all your leaders onto this listserv, this Google group, so that everybody can receive the same information. And now I'm going to hand it over to Chris, and he'll tell you a little bit more about the best of the best session.
Great. Thank you, Tiffany. And just piggybacking on some of the stuff that Tiffany's already talked about, the website, the web page is really your main landing source for content, and trying to connect with AACRAO. We try to give you a single source to where to go, and then have links off of there. So one thing that you may or may not be aware of is that, as you may know, sessions for next year's annual meeting have already opened, but we do slot about 3 sessions just for best of the best sessions from the state regionals. And that's on a little bit different timeline than the regular sessions that are being reviewed by the committee right now. And that opens up later this year. And essentially, again, you go back through the main page, and based on your conference, if there was a great session that a lot of people talked about and raved about that you feel would be worthy of consideration that you want to put forth, go to the page, enter some information and submit it. Some kind of neat things is, well, one of the best things, I guess, is that a presenter will get a free complimentary registration to the annual meeting. And they would just cover the cost of that. So if there's multiple presenters, one person can go. But if it's just a single presenter, then that person would get a free registration. And again, last year there were 3 submissions, and so they slotted all 3 from what I understand, but I think it would be great to have a lot more, and who knows where that may go. So that's just a little bit of the best sessions. Tiffany, next slide, please. So again, this is just kind of how to submit, where to go, and the submission opens up December 9th, and then the deadline is about January 20th. There's some flexibility with the program committee there. Those are not hard deadlines, but just wanted to give you a little bit of how to navigate from that. And again, once you're on the main page, if you scroll down to where the quick links are, that's where the AACRAO's Best of the Best forum is, so you can access that. Next. Another thing that I just want to highlight is that there is a state and regional award available to recognize the good work that state and regionals are doing. And that is already opened as well. And it's the Albert Ockerman Award, and it's technically considered a non-member award, is how you would find it. It opened on Monday of this week. And once you log into Open Water, you would enter the information of the state regional and then type a one-page summary of kind of the activities, and that goes to the awards committee and they'll review that. Some of the winners, the recent winners last year, I think Texas AACRAO received an award for their kind of virtual college fairs coming out of COVID and just making it more accessible for a lot more students. Other past ones are PACRO, Pacific AACRAO, for their LDI, their Leadership Development Institute. I think CAPACRO is a pretty recent winner as well. Chesapeake AACRAO for just engaging members, again, in COVID times. So we want to just recognize the activity, and then presenters or award recipients are recognized at the annual meeting during the business meeting. So that's the Ockerman Awards.
Thanks, Chris. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about some of the upcoming resources that we have for state and regional associations. Number one being Becoming a 501c3 webinar that AACRAO is hosting on September 8th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. We've invited our attorney to kind of walk state and regionals through kind of the process of becoming a 501c3 and what some of those benefits are. So if you're interested in attending that webinar, that will be on September 8th. The webinar will also be recorded for those who are unable to attend. We're also working on onboarding 101, kind of best practices when it comes to onboarding your leadership. Once we get into the discussion portion in the next couple slides, we'll kind of be asking you for feedback on kind of what you would like for us to cover in that session, whether that be like a webinar or a course that we decide to put out. We're also thinking about sharing a How Can You Share AACRAO Content webinar that's currently in the works. We know that there's a lot of AACRAO content out there. There's a lot of stuff on the website, and sometimes it's a little bit tricky to navigate because you don't really know where to click or where to go. And so we try to link as much as we can on the state and regionals page, but sometimes there are other parts of the website where you can grab AACRAO content and share that with your members. And so we're working on a webinar for that. So just make sure you keep an eye out for that, subscribe to that Google group, and that way we'll post information on there as soon as that webinar is set up and we have a date for that. Also in the works is a treasurer group for state and regional associations. That's currently in the works. We're considering a platform so that the treasurers can all kind of talk to each other, and then we'll involve our VP for finance as well in that treasurer Google group. We are also in the process of improving our current state and regional partnership programs. So I know a lot of the state and regionals have an agreement with AACRAO as a part of this program, and we're working to improve that program. So those of you that currently have an agreement, we're not taking anything away, we're simply adding to that. And for those state and regional associations that are not a part of the program, we really encourage you to join because there are a lot of benefits that we're working on for that program, and we'll send you more information about that as that rolls out. On the next slide, I'm actually going to go into the state and regional fundamentals course. So this is a new course that we've rolled out online. You can access it on the through the bookstore. And the great news about this is actually free. So anybody can access this. You don't pay a dime. It's free. And what this course does is it provides you with some of the best practices that you can apply for your association when it comes to running your association, running a meeting, how do you develop, professional development activities to share with your members. We cover all sorts of things in this course. And we recommend also that you have your new onboarded leadership members actually take this course because it's free. It helps to create alignment. This is something that we recommend. And so again, this is available through the AACRAO bookstore and it's free.
Does it have a badge with it? Do you know, Tiffany, or something like that?
I'm not sure. I'd have to
Okay.
double check on that.
That's right. I thought Annette mentioned that it was possible badge, but it's fine.
It's possible, but I can double check on that.
Just
So,
before we get to the question and answer, I just want to have two follow-up items. One, I think in terms of the best sessions, in terms of designating somebody to submit that, it probably would make more sense for the current president-elects to submit that session, I assume, since they're going to be planning the annual meetings coming up this year, but it could be the president. And then likewise for the awards, maybe that would be good to have the past presidents submit that. Those are just some recommendations as we think about whom from your association or your executive teams to be able to submit those awards and sessions. That just point, have somebody do it. That's all.
So I am looking at the chat right now, and it looks like we have a question about, is there a link for the 501c3 webinar? So I believe the webinar team is actually working on getting that information up there. And so we'll have that information to you soon if it's not already up there. Once that information is up, it'll be on our upcoming webinars page.
And I think I'll make sure to send it out to the state and regional listserv Google group as well. And if we also have a presence on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, you can also friend the AACRAO State and Regional group on Facebook. And I think AACRAO usually will use that platform to communicate upcoming webinars and so forth.
And just to hop on there, this is Christina, my camera's off, but yes, webinars has not put out the link to that quite yet, but it will be out shortly. And as Chris said, that will be available to you guys in multiple different areas for registering. And again, as mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, you guys are welcome to hop off of mute if you have any questions and want to answer, or not answer your own questions, but ask them. And you can always use that Q&A function as well.
Just on that that webinar on the how to become a 501c3, essentially that was the Middle States group, Middle States AACRAO, reaching out to our treasurer, Ari Kaufman, and then he looped in Melanie and Tiffany and myself as we kind of look at that. So it's going to be kind of consulting primarily for them, but people can join in, and I think we'll open it up for other webinars. So it's not just going to be an exclusive type thing. And I think one of the things that Tiffany's already mentioned is that there's a lot more strategic alignment with state and regionals as part of the strategic plan, which is a good thing. I mean, having a treasurers group with our VP for finance, I think will be a really neat thing, a neat group as they roll that out. I know Ari has met with Chris Apple, who's on AACRAO staff, looking at activities and so forth, and they're creating a charter and getting that rolling. So that's coming out as well.
I can see that there's another question coming in from Allegra. Thank you for your question. She's asking, has anyone tried to do virtual swag for remote events? Ooh, that's a good question. Indiana AACRAO is planning to stay virtual this year and wondering if anyone considered sending things to folks at home.
I don't have any experience with that, but if any of you guys have experience with that, feel free to share that with us. Like Christina said, you can either raise your hand and then she'll unmute you, or feel free to type that answer out in the Q&A.
Was virtual swag like background type stuff, or is there more like what would be considered virtual swag or merch, as my daughter reminds me of what the kids call it these days.
Allegra, I just unmuted you, so feel free to chime in.
Christina?
Of course.
Yeah, so we had considered, we did a virtual event last year, and we had some discussion of sending a little goodie bag to each registrant at their home or select address for those who are already on campus. And we ended up backing off of that simply because it was kind of a heavy lift. But we are doing another virtual event. So yeah, the idea was either swag that is virtual itself, or physical swag that would arrive where folks are convening for the virtual event. Yeah, I'm just curious if anyone's charted that territory yet.
Alexander's in Q&A saying that WACRO and UMACRAO last year held a joint virtual conference and had door prizes for their attendees at certain sessions that were mailed out after the conference. That's really cool. Katie Brown says Rocky Mountain AACRAO was virtual for the past 2 years and we sent out gift cards. Oh, that's really cool. That's environmentally friendly too. And the idea of sending an email with a gift card. Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, I guess it's definitely possible. It's great to share those ideas. And I think it's just a matter of who would be able to send them out. And Allegra, I don't know if, I guess it sounds like for like WACRO and UMACRO, each of the associations sent it out to the registrants.
Oh, Deanna said they also raffled off gift cards as well. Nice. You guys are getting creative out here.
These are great ideas, and that's one of the great things that I love about AACRAO is the networking and just sharing of ideas, and how to do that. So thank you, Allegra, for clarifying. I was thinking like if you were thinking virtual swag or actually like tangible type of gifts. So these are some good ideas. I think it's just a matter of collecting the address information and then sending it out, and someone would have to do that. I don't know. I mean, another idea could be you could reach out to one of the vendors if they have specific merch or swag that they want to hand out. You might have to turn over different lists to them, and maybe depending on different sponsorships things that could take the burden off the executive team to have to mail it out, or somebody on the board. But most state and regionals are operational boards as well, so maybe we're just kind of used to that.
Yeah, I also wonder if you guys are offering any specific paid events at your institution, if a swag or merch idea could be a discount coupon to those events, encouraging participation and also making sure that folks feel somewhat compensated with that swag. I think that'd be cool. So I'm keeping an eye out in the Q&A for questions, but I do know that you guys had some discussion questions as well prepped.
We do. So we'll give it another minute for people to think of their questions. If they don't have any, we actually have some questions for you, and we're hoping that that'll kind of generate some discussion with this group. So I'll give everybody another minute to think of anything that you'd like to ask us. And if not, we're going to go into our questions.
Maybe people should type like which state regional they're from. It'd be good to know like all the different groups or contact information if they want, or maybe we can share that list out later on or something like that as a way to network.
All right. So we were hoping that for the state and regional associations that have won a best of the best, does anybody want to share what they won the best of the best for? What was your session? Does anybody want to share that out? And again, you can go ahead and raise your hand. Christina will unmute you, or you can type it in the chat or the Q&A section.
We stumped the audience. If it's Kate, I heard someone say Katie Brown. If it's the Katie Brown that was from our macro, I think she did a best of the best session last year. Oh, she put in the chat.
Oh, interesting. I'm sorry, Reginald, I'm just seeing your message saying that the chat is disabled. That is odd and should not be the case.
So we've got Wisconsin ACRA here submitted for building resilient teams. All right, well, feel free to continue to share if you have anything. Our other question is, we'd like to know from you guys, what would you like to see if we were to roll out an onboarding 101 webinar? What are some of the topics that you feel like state and regionals would benefit from for onboarding 101?
And just to put some more meat on the question, I guess one of the things that we hear often from state and regionals is that we need training. And so like, okay, well, help us understand what that looks like. Because a challenge for that is that each state regional is very different in terms of structure. There's not a common, exec board, and there's different needs. So we just would love to hear a little bit more about how we can provide the content that you all might be looking for.
So Jamie put in the chat, I'd like to see how other state and regional associations divide out what duties each position on the board have to complete throughout the year.
And some of that might be available on websites, like, for AACRAO, Illinois AACRAO, we have our kind of responsibilities posted on our website. And from the main AACRAO state and regional webpage, if you click on the states, that should bring you to the board. And some of the responsibilities are captured in the state regional guide that's also available for free. It's a PDF that was released a couple of years ago, and it talks about the different responsibilities of the president, president-elect, and so forth. I think the course covers it just a little bit as well at a pretty high level. And one of the things I just want to highlight real quickly on the course is that it's meant to complement the guide, the state regional guide. So just how the two kind of play together. But thanks for your question, Jamie.
So we have another comment in the chat, and Reginald has said that simply sharing resources available through AACRAO. We can talk a little bit more about this on that how to share AACRAO content webinar that we have in the works. And then also for upcoming legislation, for those of you that receive AACRAO transcript, if you remember, you get a lot of those legislative updates on there. And then, like I said, if you use that request an AACRAO Rep form on the website, we can reach out to Bill and Michelle to see if they're able to do either pre-recorded session, a virtual session, or if they can attend in person and kind of give that legislative update.
Yep. Thanks for the comment, Reginald, because we understand, leadership changes over every year. And so how do we continue to kind of give you the basic information that you need and how to navigate and where to find it? And so that's where having the webpage is kind of the main landing spot for a lot of the resources and to get in touch with AACRAO. Tiffany, I think we might be ready for another question to ask them. So I guess as you probably are aware, sessions for the annual meeting is already open. Are there specific sessions that you would want to see offered at our annual meeting as it relates to state and regional? You can put that in the chat or unmute or talk about different topics.
We have a quiet group today. Must be because it's towards the end of the day on the East Coast anyway.
That could totally be that. Definitely could be that.
All right, Katie has said that she'd like to see a session on how to develop future leaders in your organization.
Katie, that's an interesting session topic. I'm curious to know if there are any specifics that you would want covered in that session, in terms of how do people get more involved with AACRAO? How do we help advocate for moving someone within their own institution from an associate role, for example, up to maybe a director role? If you could provide a little bit of clarification, I'd be really interested to hear that.
Yeah, I figured it'd be easier to talk rather than type. I guess I'm just thinking more along the lines of how to get those members of your state and regional organization developed to be future leaders of the state and regional organization. So how to get those members to convert into volunteers and committee members and future elected positions, things like that.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you for coming off of mute and for explaining that. We're all taking notes right now to ensure that your ideas are reflected, so I appreciate it. And Reginald, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm also curious to know a bit more about what you'd look for in a session on member engagement, if you don't mind coming off mute or typing it in the Q&A. If not, that's totally okay too.
Well-
Tiffany, I'm wondering if you can flip back to the slide with your contact information on it as well, in case folks want to message directly.
One thing just to answer Reginald's question, earlier this year, January, we did a webinar on member engagement, and it was a panel. And I think that webinar is still available. If you go to AACRAO's main webpage and then resources, and I think it's under online learning, and then look at past webinars, you can look for a state regional. It was in January this year, so that could be something to look at. There's a lot of good ideas that were generated from that. And then also just real quick on Katie's point, that's good about how to generate, or have like a pipeline of leadership. One of the things we tried to do last year before the annual meeting was to feature AACRAO's Leadership Development Institute, which is like a year-long, not intensive, it's a year-long program where people are assigned mentors. And I think the expectation is for people to get involved with AACRAO, either presenting at an annual meeting or get involved in the leadership. And I don't know if there's anybody on the call from AACRAO that could speak a little bit more to it, but that was very neat. I think a pipeline that they've developed. A lot of it was just talking about different forms of leadership, where they have mentoring and they check in like once a month, sometimes as I think as a group, as a cohort, and then individually with the mentors. But it was a really neat structure.
So I definitely haven't figured out from Reginald's previous comment saying the chat looks disabled. I'm not sure how to re-enable it, but I did put a link to the webinar that Chris had referenced from January in the Q&A section, answering Reginald's question or comment on session on member engagement. So if you go to the answered section, you'll be able to find the link to that webinar, and hopefully you guys can check that one out. And I saw that Chris popped something in the chat saying if folks are kind of done with questions and don't have any more, we can wrap up sooner and give people back a bit of time in their afternoon. But I do want to encourage us to stay on for maybe a minute or two more in case folks have a last minute comment, a last minute question. And again, Tiffany and Chris, thank you guys so much for being with us and for taking the time to put this presentation together and join us today.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Christina. Chris and I, we have our contact info listed on here. If you have any questions for us, any suggestions, if you guys need help with something, feel free to reach out. Like I said, my role at AACRAO is to work with the state and regional associations to give you the support that you need. I work alongside Chris. I work with our VP for Leadership and Management Development, who supports our state and regionals. So any questions, any concerns, if you need help with something, feel free to just reach out to us and we'll try to get you the answer that you need. All right, if there are no last minute questions or comments, we're going to end this webinar and we'll give you some free time back. But we hope that you'll continue to stay engaged with us and we hope to see you guys soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks.
Take care.
We
Bye, guys.
hang out for a bit in case anybody, whatever, has a question or whatever.
Definitely. We
It's
can,
fine.
Tiffany and Chris, if you guys are comfortable with it, we can definitely stay on until maybe 3:45,
Absolutely.
3:48. I feel the need for some upbeat music. I don't know what it is. I think the silent crowd must have been related to just feeling a little bit tired, because I definitely am feeling that today. Alrighty, and
No, it's good. I mean, just